Hi guys, I'm Kevin McNamara and welcome to the Inspired Healing Podcast. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now on today's podcast, I have the great honour of speaking with the most amazing lady, Sarah McCalden. Sarah's a really successful entrepreneur, an ultra marathoner. Her story will inspire you, it'll make you cry, it'll shock you, but most of all, it's going to uplift you from where you are way up there. And look, I've had the pleasure of spending some time with Sarah at certain events, business events throughout the world, and she's one of the most inspiring people I know, bar none. Her story is fascinating and the courage she possesses is beyond anything I've ever seen or heard. To go through what she went through and come out the other side is a true testament to the type of character and determination she possesses. I think you will really enjoy this episode. So here it is. This is me and Sarah McCalden. Here we are. So Sarah, thanks for coming along. It's great to have you here on the Inspired Healing Podcast, as I've called this. So thanks for coming along all the way from the UK. You're not here in person, but one day we'll do an in-person podcast. So thanks for that. You're born in Scotland, which I didn't realise. And what do you remember about those? I think it was the first 5 years of your life you were in Scotland. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What sort of memories do you have of that? Do you had many memories of that time?
Yeah, I do. I have memories of my brother and my sister being born, actually. So they're about 2.5 years younger than me. They're twins.
Okay.
And I have a memory of my mum going into hospital and me crying as she was like walking away.
Oh, really?
Obviously, I didn't understand that she was going to have 2 babies when I was 2.5. And then I remember going to visit them after they were born, and my mum, she gave me a Russian doll. You know, each time I went to visit, I got like a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one.
Oh wow!
And there were like a few sweeps at the bottom.
Yeah, right.
And I've still got those, actually, like 38 years later. And you know, I the smell of them is still the same. It's really quite funny. It just
Right.
Yeah, it takes
I suppose
me
when
back
you smell them,
it
takes you back there to that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, I mean, I remember going to playgroup there, and I've still got a friend from there, Caitlin, who I keep in touch with now, and who I've visited several times, you know, over the years, and that's pretty nice. And you know, my all my family is from there, so we go. Well, I haven't been up there in a few years now, but you know, growing up when we were living in London and then America, we did go every year up to Scotland to visit family. And
yeah, wow.
so,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, because I was 4 years old when I left England, because I was born over in the UK, in north of London there, and we came over on the boat to Australia, and I still have these memories of not much about England itself, although I do remember a couple of Christmases there. It was snowing at my nan's house, and we'd wake up Christmas morning, all the huge presents on the end of the bed, just amazing. Well, they seemed huge back then. I don't know how big they were, but they just
Yeah.
anyway. And but I remember the boat trip over on the boat called the Castel Felice, and I've got these memories of the pool being there, and this little sort of canvas pool where us 4 kids would sort of jump in the pool and whatever, and it was very hot, and we'd all get sunburned. But back then, you didn't wear a hat and all that kind of stuff. You just went out in the sun, because so used to be living in England, of course, and being quite cool, I guess. But I do remember there was a band playing on this particular ship, and it was like a Tongan or sort of like an Islander type band. And the best memory I've got, which is really, really weird, is of this lead singer of this band who was playing either a banjo or a guitar or something. And at the end of one of his songs, he just started eating soap. I've got no idea why he just started eating soap, this guy. I'm thinking, and no one believes me that I saw that, but it's what I saw. I'm absolutely positive, but it's just a weird sort of memory to have from that sort of time when I was like 4 years old. So that was quite weird. But both parents work, or just your dad, or?
Yeah, my parents met at university, and at the University of Edinburgh. So my mum was going to teachers' college there, but when she had me, she stopped working, And my dad was doing his PhD there, and then after he finished that, he got a job in London, and that's when we moved down to London. So
5 until 10, you're in London, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what was that like? Was it much different to Scotland?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think of it as really like a separate part of my life. And we moved into the like a terraced house in 1983, and then I like next door but one, they moved in, I guess the next year or something, and they had a family, like, you know, and the children were ages with me and my brother and my sister. And so that was really fun. Like they were like our siblings, you know, like we played every day after school, and we just did so many things together, like as two families, you know, at the weekends. And it was really nice. That's what I really remember about that time, just, and being free to like run around and do silly things.
Yeah. What was the school like back then? Were you a good student?
Yeah, yeah, I was, but I didn't really, I didn't like school. I had really bad anxiety about going to school, and I often pretended like I was ill so I didn't have to go to school. And it was all to do with like relationships with other people. I really had trouble with that aspect of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that like other school kids, or was it sort of?
Yeah, it was other school children, yeah. And actually, my parents put me into a private school after I think 4 years of being in that school, just because I was, you know, like my mum had to drag me in there every day. Like it was, and I think I spent about a third of the year off school sick.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And what, you just didn't get along with them, or it was sort of?
Yeah, it really. I was just really afraid. I was.
Were you shy, sort of thing? Or?
Yeah, I was really. Yeah, I was. I was really shy, and I just. Yeah, I didn't know how to deal with people. You know, I guess like it. You know. Yeah, it just wasn't easy for me. And like, you know, the girls, you know, like sometimes we'd be friends and sometimes we wouldn't be. And then, you know, like all of that kind of stuff, it was really difficult for me to understand that. And what, you know, like it really caused me a lot of anxiety. Like, yeah. So yeah. And that went on like throughout. It's just continued.
Yeah. I mean, look, I get it, because I was sort of similar. I had this stutter at school and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't like talking to people because I would stutter and all this kind of thing, and I was painfully shy. I think I was the shyest kid in the whole world, and I just didn't like, talking to people. I mean, I played sport with a few mates and that kind of thing. That was fine, playing sport. Dealing with people face to face and trying to have trying to be fit in with society, it just didn't sort of gel with me. I've got to say, the same sort of thing, I guess. And it's funny how that sort of carries. Like I'm still shy now, but you sort of push yourself at some stage, and you're still shy, but you push yourself to sort of be part of society, I guess. And well, certainly I do. That's sort of you get a little bit better as you get older, I guess. But that certainly was an interesting time in my life for sure. So you had these sort of issues with kids, I guess, and then when did you move to Washington? Was that you're about 10 or?
Yeah, I was 10. It was in August that we moved, and so I was almost 11, and so I went into the 6th grade in America, and that was like also really traumatic. You know, so I was the very youngest in my year, and like everybody was a giant compared to me. And I felt like people were making fun. I felt like people were making fun of me, like they were making fun of my accent and stuff. And I think, like, looking back, I don't think that they were being malicious. I think they love the English accent, right?
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was like they were being mean to me. And you know, like, even like when, you know, they do this stupid spelling bee thing at school, and I would just get it wrong immediately so that I just wouldn't have to participate. You know, and so yeah, I really found that difficult, and again, my mum had to take me into school.
Yeah.
But they had guidance counsellors there, which was something a bit different to England. And
Yep.
so I was like, so I quite often had appointments with this counsellor person to help me with all of that kind of stuff. And I don't actually know if it was really helpful. I mean, I like speaking, like you were saying, speaking in front of people, that was always really, really difficult. I remember we had to do a report. We had to bring in like a brown paper bag, like a lunch box bag thing, with stuff in it about us, and share it, like stand up in front of the class and share about us.
Yeah.
And it, you know, I just could, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. And I know, and I went through my whole school life after that, like not being able to do that, and never doing that.
Yeah. Wow. So you had this real, obviously it was fairly tough. You had a lot of moves growing up, from, you know, different countries and that kind of thing. Do you think, I mean, for me, I look at that, for I guess a lot of people, and I see it as being a good thing. Like you're moving to a different environment and that kind of thing, and meeting new people and all that I think can be good for people. And, you know, I look back on my own life and I think if that was me, I'd hate it, because I'm meeting all these new people every time we move, and I'm shy as it is. How did you find the moving and meeting new people? Obviously, it was tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think I look back on it too, and I think, well, you know, like I'm a much better person for doing all of that stuff. I know people who've never moved, like, their whole lives, and they just don't have you know, they've got a different experience to what I've had, and I'm really grateful for for everything, really. But yeah, at the time, it was really difficult. I went to 8 schools in 12 years, so
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's tough for someone who's shy and doesn't, you know, finds it hard to
yeah.
speak with people. My goodness. And from there, you got your first job, did you? Still in?
Yeah, well, so when I was 14, my parents got divorced, or they separated, and me and my mum and my brother and my sister moved back to London. And then I moved back to America 2 years later to live with my dad.
Okay.
And then I spent 7 more years living in America. So I did go to the last year of school there, and that was, and you see, my dad was traveling every week, so basically I was left at home by myself with the cats. and I got really mixed up in the wrong crowd, you could say, and I started doing drugs and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember I started off the year having like A's and B's, and by the time I'd finished, I was getting like C's and D's and skipping school and whatever. But I did apply to 3 universities, and I got into all 3. But at the time, I just couldn't. I decided not to go. I needed more time to think about what I wanted to do. So I got a job working for United Airlines at the airport. Yeah, so that was really fun, because I really, you're talking about traveling and stuff, and I think really that was just part of who I was. Like, I'd always just moved around. So I thought, well, this is great because I can just travel and do stuff. And then so I did that for a while, and I did lots of traveling. I traveled back to London, quite a few times. I traveled to Chicago. I went to see some friends in Connecticut. I went to San Francisco. I did all kinds of different things during that time. But that was just a year and a half. And then I got on a flight from London to San Francisco, and
I want to hear about I want to hear about this one. The flight plane.
And I was 8, so I was 18, or maybe I was 18, and I just got on a United Airlines flight, because it's an American airline. You're not allowed to drink any alcohol until you're 21, but I was 18, and anyway, I was sitting next to this lady. And then these two people behind us as well, and she kept on ordering drinks for us and everything. And I was just, I don't remember the flight. I remember walking through the airport, staggering around. And anyway, I thought it was fine. And then a month later, the manager, or whoever she was, she called me into her office, and she said she showed me this letter that some passengers had written that was sitting behind us. Okay. And they looked at the seat chart to find out who the passengers were, and of course one of them was me. So I got my flight benefits taken away, and I just thought, okay, well, this isn't any fun anymore. I can't travel, even if I need, I think they were suspended for 6 months or something. But
okay, so you weren't actually working at the time. You were just
no, I wasn't working. But the flight attendants who served me alcohol, they got fired for serving people and me underage. Yeah, so it was a big deal. And then that's when I decided, actually, I'm going to go to university, and I decided that I was going to study government and international politics. So I did that, but I got clean and sober in 1999. And for the first time, and I did all, and that was when a semester after I'd started university, I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere if I kept up that kind of stuff in terms of being able to study and get grades and everything.
And is this still in the US, or you gone back home?
That was in the US, yeah. Yep. So I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. Then and I did that for 3 years, and I graduated. I did a 4-year degree in 3.5 years, which I was pretty impressed. I was impressed with myself for doing that, and I stayed sober all of that time, and I did really well. But at the end of that, I remember thinking, the semester beforehand, the semester before I graduated, I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? I didn't really know what I was going to do afterwards. And I actually decided that I was going to go to Australia, and I booked a ticket and everything. And then a couple of weeks before I was going to leave, I just got really afraid, and I didn't go. I just thought I was afraid to be by myself in a different country, so I decided to go back to London. So I went back to London, and that was in 2002. That was on September 11th, 2002, that I moved back. Oh, right. A year after September 11th, 2001. So.
Was that about the time you got a boyfriend and you got a job in a bar? Would that be about the same time?
Yeah, so I got a job working for the probation service when I got back to London, and then I got another job. After I'd worked there for a month or something, I thought, oh, and I had money in my bank account. And I thought, well, wow, I could have even more money in my bank account if I get another job, because I didn't, I didn't really have a social life or anything. I just moved and I didn't really know anyone, and so I got a job in a bar, and there was this guy there who, he was like, I quite liked him. He was really nice, but he was really weird. Like, he would be asleep at the end of the bar, and I was like, that's just strange, like when you're working, to be actually asleep. And but what I didn't know is that he was asleep because he had just been in the bathroom shooting up heroin.
Yeah, right.
And I remember we went out a few times after work, and he told me that he had some drugs, and he said to me that he wouldn't let me take them. And of course I was like, oh, well, I really want to take them now. And so eventually I persuaded him, after a few weeks or whatever, to let me try some heroin, and I tried some heroin. He injected me with heroin, and that was it, I thought. And then I got another job at another bar, and I met another guy who became my boyfriend, and that was at the end of 2002. And he ended up being a crack addict, and of course I tried that as well, and that was really it. I remember 3 months later, I didn't even know myself. I didn't, the mind that I had, it was not there anymore.
Wow. So just paint a bit of a picture for me, because knowing the person you are now, I just can't. That sort of lifestyle is so far removed from the person that I know.
Yeah.
I just paint a bit of a picture. What was a night out like for you back in those days? What would a normal night out on the grog and the heroin?
Well, I didn't really drink alcohol. Because I'd been sober for so long, but I just, I hadn't used any drugs either, by the way. Like, I was clean and sober during that 3 years when I was 1999 to 2002, just to clarify that. Yep. But I guess I didn't really go out, and that's never been a part of who I am. Like, even now, like I in America, of course, you can't go out to the pub or the bar until you're 21. And I didn't have, I was clean and sober when I was 21. And so I never got into that lifestyle. And here as well, in London, I never got into that lifestyle. It would be like going back to somebody's house and using drugs.
Yeah. Okay. So you sort of go out and you'd go back to someone's house and just sit around talking, and someone would bring out the drugs, or how did it sort of work?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't really even be around like too many people, like one or two people, and that was probably, I can think of that guy who gave me heroin, and he's clean, by the way. Now he's got more than 10 years of sobriety, and he's just had a baby with his wife.
Oh, great.
So at the time, it was like a really hopeless situation for him, and eventually it was like that for me. But yeah, so for example, after working in a bar all night or in a nightclub, which is what I did, then I would just go back to my boyfriend's house, and he lived in King's Cross, you see. So then I moved into his house, and of course, at the time, of course, that was notorious, that area, for those Class A drugs. Yep. And I would just spend all my money on drugs and tobacco. I wouldn't even eat.
Yeah, jeez. So you were sort of the typical skinny sort of druggy type person back in those times. Yeah.
Yeah, but I functioned for a while, in terms of work, like I always had a job of some description, you know, but I always ended up being unreliable and having to leave.
You went those 3 years, you know, clean, sober, the whole box and dice. So what kind of mindset brought you back to the drugs? Was it just to fit in type of thing, or was there?
I think so. I think maybe to fit in, or to just to feel a part of something else. And because I've always had this mind of, well, I want to know. I mean, I remember even saying, you know, like when I was 18 or whatever, being like a really smart ass and being like, I'm going to try every drug in the whole world before I die, you know.
Wow.
And so practically I had done, you know, by the time I was 24, because I moved back to London in 2002 September, and you know I turned 24 that October.
And so from there, I think it was 2006. You sort of reached that point where I think you're almost at death's door. Just tell us about that part of your life and how that sort of how you reached that final point where you thought, no, I've just got to change.
Well, I think you know, like I said, even after 3 months of using crack, like I knew like that I wasn't myself, and I'm actually at the same bar that I met my boyfriend. There was a guy who was clean and sober who went to AA meetings and Cocaine Anonymous meetings, as it happened. So occasionally I would go to some Cocaine Anonymous meetings during those 4 years, and I'd try and get clean and sober. And I felt like despair, you know, like and worthless and helpless. Like nobody could help me. Like I couldn't. Like I felt like AA was for everybody else, but nobody could help me. Like I was not like I couldn't even help myself, and I was like that for you know, like those years. It was really horrible, and I would walk out of, you know, where we lived in King's Cross, because at first I was too afraid to go and buy drugs from the drug dealers down there, and then of course I started to do that, and I just got used to it, and it was just like a normal thing. And I remember like looking at my feet walking towards the drug dealer, and in my mind I knew that I shouldn't be doing this, that I needed to get some help, but at the same time my feet were walking towards the drug dealer. And then I was getting the drugs and putting them in my mouth, and then I was walking home, you know. And I remember one day I got into the drug dealer's car, and his partner was in there, and then I turned into I was in the back seat, and there was like a little baby in there.
Wow.
And I got out the car, and I knew then like that was not who I wanted to be. I didn't want to be that person, but it was still, I didn't know how to stop, and that other than like ending my life, right? And so I remember my mum, because obviously my parents knew about this, and my brother and my sister as well. And my mum said to me, "Do you want to go up to Scotland for a few days?" And you know, and so I said, "Yeah, okay, great, I'll do that." And I'd been telling her that I was clean, and I wasn't.
Yep.
And so we got up there, and of course I didn't have any drugs, and I couldn't sleep that night. Like I just was like going through major withdrawal. And she said to me in the morning, she's like, I know you're doing drugs. And I had to leave. I got on a plane and flew back to London. I was so ill. I was ill
Yeah, right.
and I needed more drugs. And so I flew on a plane back to London, and I got off that plane at Stansted, took the train to King's Cross, and just went and bought drugs and went back to my house and smoked them. And then I bought more drugs, and then I went to I intended to overdose on those. And I ended up at the emergency room, and then that's when I got out of my heroin habit. So, of course, like the nurses, and the doctors, they weren't really nice. I mean, just like if you can imagine, like I see people doing this, or like now, and I feel like repulsed by it, but like people like picking up cigarette butts like off the ground and lighting them and smoking them. I mean, like that is what I was doing outside of the hospital.
Wow.
When I was there, I mean, it was just like you say, I'm so far removed from that now, it's kind of almost unbelievable. But I went back to my mum's house. My mum got back, and I went back to my mum's, and I spent 5 days lying on her couch, and I didn't sleep at all for 5 days. And I remember I said to my mum at one point, in one of the middle of the night one night, I was like, "You've got to call the doctor. I need some help. Like I'm just going crazy." And the doctor said, "Well, you can't get into a rehab. There's a 6-week waiting list." And I grabbed the phone and I was like, "You're telling me that I'm going to need to use again for 6 more weeks? In 6 weeks, after using for 6 weeks, I won't want to stop again." Because there were times when I did want to stop, and then of course I would relapse, and then I didn't want to stop again for another like 3 months or 6 months or whatever it was.
Wow.
And so the time was then or never, right? It was now or never. So I got through that. And actually for the next like 18 months, I didn't sleep much. Like I slept for like 3 or 4 hours a night, but I did stay sober. And I managed to get a year clean. I went to Cocaine Anonymous like once or even twice a day. What I did was I went to Barcelona, and I did like a teaching certificate to teach English. And I got back, and I'd managed to stay clean throughout all of that time. And I went to some meetings over there as well. And then I got back, and I got a job in London teaching English. And I kept on going to meetings, and I really like made that my focus. And I managed to save up money, and really turn things around for myself. And then one day a friend of mine from Cocaine Anonymous rang me up and said that he was going to New Zealand. He's like, "You should come, you'd really fit in over there." Yeah. So I said to him, "Okay." And I applied for a working holiday visa, and I got that. It was all done within like 24 hours. And then 6 weeks later, I was in New Zealand.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And so you saw this young baby in the back of a car at some stage there, and is that the first time you thought, "I've got to change"?
No, I knew that I needed to change, like all the time. I knew that. I knew.
What was the one? Is there one thing you can point out that really you said, "Right, this is it. There's no more going back"? Is there a particular point in time?
Well, that was one of the, I felt like really disgusted with myself when I got in the back seat with that baby, and I just thought like, what am I doing? And I don't know how old I was. How old would I have been? Like 27 or 28, something like that. And then realizing when I didn't have any drugs that actually I was very badly addicted. Like I was ill, and just like I was with a guy who like threw a glass ashtray at my head, and like, like it was just, I was not, I knew I needed to get out of that. But like I said, like the only way I knew how to do it, because I didn't think I could do it, because I tried and I hadn't been able to do it a lot over those 4 years. I didn't have any trust in my, I didn't have any trust or belief in my ability to stop without committing suicide.
What sort of turned that around?
Well, that was that day when I ended up in A&E, because I had tried to commit suicide, and that's when I did get off of I didn't go back and get a heroin habit again, and like I just knew, and I just like there were people who I'd met in Cocaine Anonymous before who were able to help me, meet me and go to meetings with me. I stopped feeling like I was missing out on drugs. And if I didn't go to a meeting, I started feeling like I was missing out on something good. And, so that it was like a shift that happened, and it was very, very quick once I made the decision, right? It's really funny, like, you're not ready till you're ready. How many times did I try and fail? And I guess I had more stuff to learn, or whatever it was, I wasn't ready. And, if I think back to it, it's because I really, in some ways, it was easier to keep living that way than make a change.
Yep. That sort of comfort zone sort of thing, you're more comfortable there, and it's just too hard getting out of that. So would you have, like, I'm guessing here, like you'd have two voices in your head, one that wanted to give up, one that said, no, let's go and do some more drugs, that kind of thing? Was it really?
Yeah. And I remember, I had all kinds of different jobs during that time. But one time I was working at a school, and I remember, like, I'd go there, like I'd been doing drugs all night, and then I'd just have a shower and get my clothes on and go to work. But there was it was just really ridiculous thinking back on it. But I remember one time when I was trying to get sober, like I think I'd been going to a few meetings, and I said to myself, I walked down to get some drugs, and then I was like, oh, should I get them or shouldn't I? I said, okay, I'm going to call my friend Craig, and if he answers the phone, then I'm going to go to a meeting, and if he doesn't, then I'm going to go and buy the drugs.
Right.
And it was really
irrational sort of thinking, and
it was a horrible place to be, and so many people don't escape that, and I'm really
for sure
fortunate that I persevered. That is what it was. I persevered, because I could have just said, actually, no, I'm not going to keep trying, because I've always failed so far.
As you say, that perseverance inside of you, that you could see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and that just kept moving you forward. You had the support, obviously.
Yeah.
The support obviously really helps, having those people there that are...
It was, and I listened to the stories there, because there were people there with like 2 years clean. Some people had 20 years clean. Some people only had a few months. And I remember one guy, he told this story. He was a heroin addict, and he tried, so many of us in those meetings, like who were new, like we'd just always be coming back saying that we'd relapsed, and it was like such a it was so shameful. Like I felt so much shame going back there and admitting that I'd relapsed, like I just couldn't get it or whatever. But I remember him telling a story, and it really stuck with me. And it was that he'd made the decision not to use heroin anymore, like he was going to get clean, and he was like lying on the floor, like detoxing, and this woman came in and offered him some heroin. He was in like a crack house, and And he just said no. He said, no, I'm not going to have any. And that was the beginning of him getting clean. It's like that one moment where he did something different, and then he started to gain that belief in himself again by, I guess, borrowing it from other people to start with, and then obviously as time, if you can get one day clean, then you can get a second day clean, and I had times in that 4 years where I'd get up to 6 days, and then it's all about money and having access to money in £10 amounts. £7 wasn't any good. It had to be £10 because that's how much a rock of crack or a rock of heroin cost. And I needed like 2 rocks of crack and 1 rock of heroin, or 3 and 2, or whatever it was. And so, and when I stopped, I stopped working as well, because I knew that was like having access to money was majorly triggering. So I stopped working for like a month or 2. So I didn't have any access to money. Purposefully chose to do that so that I could, and that was helping myself.
Yeah, look, fascinating story, seriously. And it's, like I say, I'm glad you've got through to the other side, and a lot of people don't, as you say.
Yeah.
So thanks for your perseverance for getting through that. So you're in New Zealand now. What's happening over there as far as you've moved to New Zealand? That was back in, what year was that? 2007, was it? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, 2007. So the guy who I met in Cocaine Anonymous, when I met him, so he picked me up from the airport and we went straight down to the mountain to go snowboarding. And that's where I met my husband, Fred. But like by now I was in New Zealand, I was drinking alcohol and I was smoking marijuana. And I was I stayed in a hostel for a bit in Owakuni and then in Auckland. I remember a guy who I'd met at the hostel at the mountain. I met him in Auckland, and he picked me up one day and took like to the skating thing. I don't know what it was. It was weird. But I guess it was a thing in New Zealand, like going to the skating thing. Anyway. And then he took me back to his house, and he offered me some pea, which is a unique to New Zealand name for crystal meth, I think. And I just burst into tears and I said, you need to take me home. And, I had that thought where like I was all the way on the other side of the world from my family, and no one would be able to help me if I got into that spiral of doing hard drugs again. And I decided, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on building my life up instead of being destructive. So he took me home anyway, and that was that. And I never tried that. Never tried that drug.
Well done.
And then in 2008, I decided actually I'm going to get clean and sober for good, and I just stopped doing everything: cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana. Right. I was finished.
Yep. And was running a part of your life at that stage? No.
No, it wasn't. No. I'd been like a swimmer in America, and at university I swam as well. But running wasn't a thing until 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you met Fred, and you guys ended up getting married. Did you get married in New Zealand?
Yeah, we did, and we had like our little reception in our back garden. It was really nice. Okay. And so that happened, but that happened in 2011. So Hunter was born in 2009, and then we decided in 2010 that we were going to get married, and then so we booked the day for the 8th of April 2011, and then we found out that we were having Finn, and he was born in August 2011.
Beautiful. And of course, at this stage, you're totally clean and really having a great life. And then you moved back to the UK. What year was that?
Yeah, that was in 2014. So I'd lived in Auckland for 7 years.
Yep.
And I became vegan in 2012 as well.
Okay.
And so that was like a big part of my journey, actually.
Yep.
Just realizing that knowing for myself is so important. Like, in a way, it's funny. Like, going back to when I tried heroin, for example, I wanted to know for myself. I wanted to know, so I've always had that kind of in me, but like realizing, because I was born vegetarian, right? My parents are vegetarian.
I didn't know.
Growing up, I've never had meat ever in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I was always very interested in animal welfare and cared about all of that stuff, but I hadn't made the connection between the dairy industry and cruelty and also the egg industry. We're conditioned not to think about it, like from the get-go, from when we're born.
Yep.
And we've got like a whole generation or 2 or even 3 generations of people behind us who have also been conditioned that way. So it's really hard to think outside of that if none of us are thinking outside of that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, how were your parents vegan back then? That's amazing.
They were vegetarian.
Vegetarian, sorry.
Yeah. My mum, I think, became vegetarian became before, maybe a couple of years before I was born or something. And it was just, I didn't even know what the the different types of meat and stuff. I didn't even know that until I was like in my 30s.
That's a good thing, actually. That's good. Like you say, like the meat and the dairy industry, they just pour billions of dollars in their advertising, and that's just how people are brought up. You've got to have meat, got to have dairy, and people just follow along like sheep. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's true that I can think about this in terms of veganism, or and also in other ways, that people will hold on to what they believe, like even in the face of evidence. Like, I guess a good example would be our business, for example, and people like thinking that they're well-meaning or whatever, and just trying to keep you in the herd, for lack of a better way of saying it, Yeah, and that happens it can happen in everything, really. But yeah, so that happened, and so when we were in Auckland, when Hunter was 11 months old, I started taking him to Play Centre, which is like a parent cooperative. It's unique to New Zealand, and it was really good for us, because I didn't have any family over there to help, and so we went there until Hunter was 5, and he graduated from there, and Finn went there from when he was 2 weeks old, and it was nice. It was also when I transitioned to being vegan, and Finn had allergies as well, it was quite difficult, because I felt really strongly about
schooling and
like, how could I, if I didn't, like when I first became vegan, it was like, oh my God, it's like somebody who just like slapped the shit out of me and been like, where have you been your whole life? And And I just thought everybody needs to know this, and it probably wasn't like the best approach that I took. And I think that it goes in stages as well. Like you can, like for me now, I'm much I guess calmer about it. Like I still feel the passion for it, but I'm not such an angry vegan. But I think it's a thing though, like that it's like going through a grieving process, like there's the anger, then there's the, like whatever those stages are, it's the same thing. That's what I guess I'm trying to say. And so that was quite difficult, like in terms of being around people at play centre, because also Finn had anaphylaxis to cashews and eggs, and of course some people thought that I was trying to veganize them by asking them not to bring eggs in, and yeah, I found that really difficult. Like going back to like when I was a child and just having that difficulty around like friendships and stuff. Yeah, I can see that definitely as something that continued on to that point. And so all of that stuff was happening, and I just decided actually I've had enough of living in New Zealand, and I miss London, and I want to go back to London. And so we went back in August 2014. And so I hadn't been I'd been working a little bit like a play centre. I'd had some paid work. I'd also been doing some tutoring English, and then also like proofreading foreign students' university papers and stuff for money. But then when I got back to London, and Fred couldn't find a job for about 8 months or something, I went back to work full time, and I found that really difficult. I didn't like it. I didn't like being away from Hunter and Finn, and what I'd imagined was going to happen when we moved back didn't happen. And so I knew that through Play Centre anyway, I'd been taught about, like self-directed play, and, not making children do things, like not directing them, like letting them do what they want to do really, and let them follow their own lead. Like that's how they learn. What's the point in showing them flashcards that have numbers on them when they, like you get like a pebble, or if they're out in the autumn and there are leaves on the ground, you can count the leaves, or, like all of that kind of stuff. Like just do what they want to do. And so when I went back to work full time, I started working in schools, and I really didn't like what I saw. And I wasn't just in one school, I was in, maybe about 10 schools over a year and a half or something. And all the schools I was just traumatized by the way that they were treating children. I worked in some primary schools and I worked in some secondary schools, and I just thought, this is absolute shit for all of these children. Like things really need to be different, and I really don't want my own children being in a system like this. It's really flawed, and but this is like how society is.
Yep, it is. The whole education system, I think, is stuffed, and people are changing that, but it's a slow process, and I think your thinking is definitely we need more of that. So so how are your kids schooled now? Are they
they're homeschooled, they're home educated, but it doesn't mean that we're at home all the time. Like we're not. We're out doing things. Like today we're going into London to go to the Science Museum. Tomorrow they've got art and sports, and maths and English lessons that they go to. And they've got like a pottery class, and Hunter goes shooting now.
Wow. And does someone come around to your home and sort of?
No, we go out. We go out and do all of these things.
Okay.
Yeah. So their maths and English stuff happens. It's just a 5-minute walk down the road from where we live.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's great. In fact, it's fantastic what you're doing with them, and so you're in the schools, and I think around at some stage you started thinking about having your own business.
Yeah, that's right. So like I was saying, that whole thing about, like children having their own lead. So I decided actually I don't want to become like a qualified teacher, because that's what I thought I would do when I came back to London. I want to do something completely the opposite, and teach teachers how to let children play. So I decided to go back to university to get a master's in professional studies in children's play. So I started that in 2015, and I worked with like the local council and some local schools to do that. And I did set up my own business, but it was very difficult to get schools on board because they are closed-minded in so many ways, and they've got their silly behavior policies and just really arbitrary stuff, anyway, it wasn't working the way I wanted it to. I was very passionate about it, but I knew that I didn't want to work 9 to 5 or 3 to 10 or whatever those horrible hours are where I'd never see Hunter and Finn. And I knew that I didn't want them being looked after by other people. And I knew that I wanted to earn more money, because I knew that money would allow me to do the things I want to do. And I knew that I wanted a lot of money, right? And I started also thinking about ways to make my money work for me. I think that was like a major thing that I started to think about that kind of stuff in 2017 or maybe 2016, like looking at, entrepreneurs like Richard Branson and, like how they've done that, and how come somebody could work in a school, for example, like as a teaching assistant or, like a dinner lady or whatever, and get paid like £8 an hour, and how come somebody else can work those same hours, and earn £20 or £50 or £100 or £1,000 or £50,000 an hour, and what's the difference between that person and me? And I really started thinking about all of those things, and that's how I came across this business. I think it's strange how I must have been looking stuff up on the internet or on Facebook, and then somehow those ads started to appear on my newsfeed.
And so, for those who don't know about your business, what kind of industry are you in, and how's it all going?
Yeah, it's going really well. So it's in personal development, and I think, like for me, I in AA and Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, and I guess any 12-step meetings, you will get into your own personal development. And for me, I just thought, well, this is a great kind of continuation from that, and away from that, because that is like a bridge, I guess you would call like AA or CA like a bridge to normal living. Yeah, so I thought, yeah, that sounds really great. And so it's an online business, and it's been amazing. It's changed my whole life again.
Yeah, it's funny, coming from this place where you were as low as you can get, suicidal, the whole box and dice, and you've just turned that totally around, and now you're in the personal development space, you're helping other people. It's amazing how life sometimes goes, and how we can come back from these dark places. And I guess there's this relationship between sort of suffering and finding that meaning in your life. And I think we all go through that, that little black hole. A lot of us are in our comfort zones over here. We might be going through some real crap in our life, but it's comfortable where we are. So we just sort of stay there. And there's this whole big black black box full of all the shit that we've been through. And the only way, and I've been through a bit myself, and the only way for me was to jump into the black box and just face all that crap. Because on the other side, you've got this meaning and this sort of greatness.
Yeah.
You have to sort of go through that suffering. And I think that just kind of sums up what you've been telling us. You had to go through all this real horrible this dark place inside your mind, and you had to confront all those demons, and you've come out the other end, and you're just really inspiring people now. You've done a whole sort of 180, 360, 180. Turn the whole thing around anyway. That's so that's just amazing.
Yeah.
I find that really very, very inspiring, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. So with the running, you started that in 2012, did you say?
Yeah. So after Finn was born, so Finn was born in August 2011, and then I lost all of the baby weight and everything, and I just decided actually I'm gonna start running, and I started running on the 1st of January 2012. I started my business on the 1st of January too. On a different year, but I think that was quite meaningful to me, like starting on the new year. And I asked Fred to drive me down to the end of this walkway thing. It was like 2.5 kilometers away from where we lived, and I ran through it. It's called Oakley Creek in Auckland, and I ran through it, but I walked as well. I couldn't run all the way, and then I kept on going out running like 5 times a week, and then I remember a couple of months later I was running 7.5 kilometers in about 40 minutes, and
wow.
I just continued to keep running, and I decided actually I'm going to run a marathon. So I signed up for the Auckland Marathon, which was at the end of October 2012, and I raised money for it's called the Animal Sanctuary in Matakana, and I did it. Like I actually through at Play Centre, we knew a family who our friends, the guy, the husband, he'd been in a terrible accident, and he'd had his legs amputated like the year before, and he was a runner. He'd done the Ironman and all of that. He was very into that, and actually he helped me train for the marathon. And I remember being like really afraid, because I didn't to talk to him even about it, because I didn't know how that would be for him, like not being able to do that stuff, and be, like he had so much recovery to do at the time. But I think it was really good for me, and it was really good for him. And so, I was just really grateful to have that support and training from him. And then, of course, I just continued running. Like I did another marathon in the next year, 2013. It was me and my friend Jane did it together, and we ran up, I think it was 8 of the volcanoes in Auckland.
Oh wow.
And that was good. And then in 2014 we moved, and I didn't do any long I did like half marathons or whatever, but not full marathons. And then in 2015 I did a 50k, and then in 2016 I did a 100k. Because I think my mindset was, when I first started running, a marathon seem like so far. And I remember, you know, like if you know Auckland, or if anyone knows Auckland, you start in Devonport and then you end up at Victoria Park, but you've got to run about, I don't know how long it is, about 7 or 8 kilometers down in one direction, and then turn around and run back. You know, like you're backtracking on yourself. And I remember after I'd done it, and I went to drive it one day, I was like, oh my God, I ran all this way. It's so amazing. Like, but it, you know, and it felt like forever in the car, right? 42.2 kilometers. But in my mind, it didn't feel like it was so far after I'd done it.
Yeah, once you finish.
You know, yeah. And I'm sure you've just done a marathon recently yourself, and you know, it's funny, isn't it? Like we can think things are out of reach, but you know, like I guess no, like always pushing my limits, like see how far I can go, is a part of who I am.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And yeah, like I say, I've just done my first one in July this year, and like you, I thought 42 kilometres, that is just like you drive it and you think, oh my God, there's no way that I can run this. And then you do it and you finish it and you think, and your mind just sort of, not explodes, it gets, you widen your mind, I think, and you think, wow, I've done this, I can sort of do anything now. That this is just, I've run a, and I think it's, there's in the world, there's only 1% of the population in the world that have ever run a marathon. So you become part of this 1%. And you've run a 100K race, so you're probably part of this minuscule little percentage of people in the world that have ever done that. So you really sort of come out of yourself, and your mind starts to expand, and you think, well, anything's possible. So when you're doing your running, do you ever go back? I know David Goggins calls it his little cookie jar. When he's out running and he's feeling really tired or whatever, he goes back and thinks about things in his past, the bad things, and they just inspire him to keep going. Do you sort of have some
I do.
kind of method to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I do remember actually on that first marathon that I ran, the Auckland Marathon, I did that. I was, you know, and what I thought about was getting off of drugs, you know, and how difficult that was for me. And you know, like I think that just pushed me, kept me focused, and kept me going. And I always go back to that really extremely tough time in my life, you know, to get out the other side, you know, whenever I'm facing adversity or whatever, you know, and I need to persevere with stuff.
Yep.
I always go back to that and think, well, God damn it, Sarah, you could do that. You can do anything, you know, and
Absolutely.
And yeah.
And what's the next? What's coming up next for you as far as running goes? Have you got anything planned, or?
I want to do the run that I did in September, but I didn't finish that run. This time I ran 69 kilometers out of 100. Because I had an injury. And of course I was really annoyed with myself. I didn't give myself quite as hard a time as I would have done before, because I've learned that that's not actually helpful. It's really counterproductive.
For sure.
To be hard on myself, or to be too hard on myself, right? You've got to push yourself, but you know, like you can't. Beating yourself up for things is not helpful. It's harmful.
Oh, for sure.
So that's what I want to do. I want to do some training. I was not prepared. You know, I have to say, when I started the run, I thought, you know, like 2 miles in or something, we had like this like steep climb like this.
Wow.
I'm like, people have hiking poles, and I didn't come with any hiking poles, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm like, oh phew, like the climb is over, like it's going to be all like straight from here. No, it was like up and down, and then like up and down, like the whole thing. It was.
Yeah. So is that on September next year again? Is it?
Yeah, it's September next year. Yeah.
I might come and do it with you. See how we go.
And but then after that, after I do that, I really want to try and do a 100-mile run.
Yeah.
And I know I could probably do those in quick succession, like I could do the 100K in September and do the 100-mile in November or December, something like that, because that could be like part of the training.
Yeah. Which is 100 days, isn't it? 100 miles. It's 160.
100. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That just seems such a long way. But you can do anything now. You've been to the abyss, you've seen it, and you know that your mind is far, far stronger than what you think.
It is, and it is really about your mind, isn't it? You can always push through things, even if you want to stop. I know I can do it. I know that it's not even a question.
Yep.
For me.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I often refer back to David Goggins, and he says that we only, when we're totally stuffed and exhausted, we've still got 60% capacity to go. So we're really only using 40% of our capacity. And I believe that because I thought there's no way I could ever run 42 kilometres. That's just ridiculous. Running, when I first started running, or first started getting serious about it, running 5Ks was a long way. I thought, wow, 5Ks, my goodness, that's just. And now that's just a little jog, just a little morning walk, basically, and just expand. So, look, 100 miles is going to be fantastic, and if anybody can do it, I'm sure that you can do it. I've got no doubt about that. So, and I know you've got a couple of kids you've got to look after this morning, so I don't want to hold you up for too long. So, thanks heaps for coming on, Sarah. Look, I may not follow you on Facebook, and you always inspire me wherever I see you. And so, if people want to follow you or hear more about you, where do they go? What's your website for your business?
They can go to the prosperitypathfinders.com or the Prosperity Pathfinders on Facebook as well.
Okay, beautiful. Certainly, it's definitely worth having a look at what Sarah's doing with the business. It's amazing, and she's inspiring a lot of people and doing really well. So, look, I wish you every success for the future there.
Thanks.
We must do a run sometime together for sure. We've got to do some sort of a run or marathon or something. I'm a lot slower than you. That's. I'll just watch you in front and there. Yeah. Look, I look forward to that, and I'll say thanks for being here. So come back in 6 months and we'll do it all again and just see where you're at there. And like I say, your story is just so inspiring, and I know people will get so much out of this podcast today. So thank you. I'm very humbled to have you on board. It's just great hearing your story. And like I say, it's just very inspiring. And thank you for sharing that whole dark part of your life with us, because it's a difficult thing to do, and you got through it, and I'm just really proud to say that I know you. So thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. That's really nice. Yeah.
Have a great
one.
Cool.
All right.
Wow. I really hope you enjoyed that first episode of Inspired Healing with Sarah McCalden. How amazing and incredible is her story. I was absolutely fascinated sitting there with her, and I hung on every single word. I hope that helped you if you're going through a similar experience. I hope it gives you the courage to not just make a change in your life, but to know you need to make a change. Look, for even more on Sarah, please check out the links on the show notes on our website, turmericheals.com. That's turmeric as in the turmeric herb, turmericheals.com. And in the description on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, just below me here, let Sarah know how this podcast was for you as well by sharing your thoughts with her on Facebook. You can reach her at facebook.com/Prosperity Pathfinders. That's facebook.com/Prosperity Pathfinders. If you'd like to support our work here on the show, please subscribe, rate and comment on our show on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us with discovery. Tell your friends about us. Share us on social media. We really appreciate that. We want to get ourselves out there in the world so people know about us and more people can hear these inspiring stories. Look, thanks for the love, you guys. Look, I really appreciate all of you, and I will see you back on the next show. Peace, love, namaste.